Hello everybody and welcome to another deck profile. This time around I'm showing you my Monarch deck post the September ban list. Konami decided to bless us with 3 Pantheisms, so I figured it would be a great time to show you my version of the deck and show you my side deck. After all, I built this deck with a competitive setting in mind, even though we can't currently go to events because of the pandemic going on anyway. So, do I think Monarchs are a tier 1 deck? No, by no means do I think that. The deck is still very fragile and it can still break sometimes, but it's a really solid rogue strategy. It's very anti-meta and it kind of flows really nicely. If you know how to navigate some hands, you can do a lot with Monarchs, and I think just navigating the deck and doing quote-unquote combos is the most fun part of the deck, because for an anti-meta deck, this deck kind of just sees a lot of cards. Anyway, so don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. You know how it is. I love that stuff. Shows me that I like what I'm doing, and I'll keep the profiles coming to you every other week or so. Anyway, so starting off with the deck, we have the 3 copies of Erebus. He is your big boy that kind of gets all of your engine going. He has targeting non-destruction removal. He can also loop a card out of your opponent's hand or a card from their graveyard, and you do this by on tribute summon, sending 2 Monarch spells or traps. The other effect is that you can tribute summon him by tributing a tributed summon monster. So essentially you 1-for-1 instead of having to tribute multiple monsters because he's level 8. The other effect is while the card's in the graveyard, you can discard a Monarch spell trap card and then add a Monarch statted card from your graveyard to your hand himself or another card, and that effect is also very strong. To his partner in crime is Ether. Ether is like your big mommy of the deck. She does a lot. She also can be tribute summoned by tributing a tributed summon monster. Say that 3 times. And then her main effect is that she sends 2 Monarch spells and trap cards to special summon a Monarch from the deck, or a card with Monarch stats. No, sorry, she actually summons a Monarch card, and a lot of times you're going to be summoning either herself, Erebus, or Kraz. The other effect is that you can banish a Monarch spell trap card from your graveyard and then tribute summon her on your opponent's turn. So that effect is really powerful, because when you combine it with stuff like Stormforce, that's a lot of interruption and a lot of pluses on your opponent's turn, which is what makes the card so nuts. For the other Monarch that we play the one Kraz, and that's pretty much it. Kraz is really good. Kraz can deal with the opponent's cards, or can generate more advantage by destroying cards, and then up to 2 cards, and then the controller of those cards draws the same amount of cards that would destroy. So if you destroy, because he can destroy up to 2 cards, you can draw up to 2 cards, or your opponent draws up to 2 cards. But he can't attack, so you can either use this as a disruption or to unbrick your hands, and that's pretty much it for the Monarch lineup. Don't play any more Monarchs. Honestly, they all kind of suck. They have some niche effects, but you should either be side decking them or just not playing them at all. Because this guy is just way better. So Vanity's Fiend is essentially your blowout card in the deck. Neither play can special summon, and this is absolutely amazing against some decks. Some decks just don't have a normal summon way to out him. Some decks can easily out him with spells or traps, but most decks don't, which is what makes the card so powerful. And we play 3 because we want to see it, maximum consistency. We are trying to make our deck consistent. It doesn't matter if you see multiples, as long as you see the first one and the rest of your hand is pretty solid. Then for the other tribute summon monster, we have the Majesty's Fiend. The effect is that monster effects cannot be activated. Now, this guy is really good once you have the Vanity's Fiend on the field, because then you create a soft lock for your opponent where they can't special summon, they can't use monster effects, and it becomes even harder for your opponent to out your current board. But this should not be a card that you should be searching straight away, because you're not really stopping your opponent from summoning unless you have a domain out on the field. Then the card becomes really good, but that's already super situational. Ideally, you just use this card as a way to checkmate your opponent, and the reason why we play one of is because he's searchable through Return of the Monarchs, because he has them good stats. Now, for the best starter card in the deck, we have 3 copies of Edia. Edia does a lot. The main things I should take away from her is that on normal specials, she special summons a Squire or Vassal from the deck, and when she's sent to the graveyard, you can add a banished Monarch spell or trap card. Also, when you use her effect, you cannot special summon from the extra deck. The reason why Eddie is so good is because she has a lot of good things going for her. She's a level 1, she's a warrior, and she puts more bodies out in the field. Her partner in crime is the Edios. Edios is phenomenal. When he's special summon or normal summon, you gain an additional tribute summon. And when he's in the graveyard, you can banish him and special summon a vassal or squire from the graveyard. And then you can now special summon for the rest of the turn. But the whole thing that you should take in mind is the Edia Eidos loop. So when you have your Edia brings out Eidos, and then you tribute summon them away, and then you use this Eidos in the graveyard, banish him, and then special summon out an Edia, and then she brings out the next Eidos. And basically that's how you keep your engine going every single turn. And don't forget that when Edia is sent to the graveyard, you get to add a banished Monarch spell or trap card. I keep mentioning squires and vassals because we are playing the one vassal. So Mithra, I consider her a flex spot in the deck. There are 3 flex spots in the deck: Mithra, Frostblast, and Upstart. So if you were to change any of the cards, you should look into those 3 cards and nothing else. Mithra is really solid because Mithra can put herself onto the field with virtually no cost. Oh well, you give your opponent a token, and that used to be like no cost, but these days your opponent can use that to go into link monsters, which is not very good. But that only happens when you summon her through her effect. A lot of the times you're going to be summoning her off your Edia as like your last target in the deck, and when she's tribute summoned, you gain an additional tribute summon for the turn, so she can enable some really powerful OTKs. So that's what you should bear in mind when you play Mithra, is that she can give you ways to close out games. Now, the reason why you should be even considering playing this deck is because we can now play 3 copies of Pantheism, and oh boy, did this card go up in price. I'm glad I had my playset way before the whole Banlist thing happened. Anyway, so Pantheism is your discard 1, draw 2 spell. However, the reason why Pantheism is considered the best one that was ever printed was because you can banish this card from the graveyard, reveal 3 Monarch cards, spell trap cards, to your opponent, and then your opponent picks one and adds one to your hand. They do not have to be different names, nor can you not show Pantheism. So there are 2 ways that you can go about it. You can kind of trick your opponent into giving you the cards that you want by, so for example, you banish a Pantheism, you show 2 Pantheisms like any other card, and a lot of the times they're not stupid to give you another Pantheism, so they'll give you the 3rd card, or you just show 3 of the same cards. And that way they have like no choice. But in the scenarios where that doesn't happen, because you can now play 3 Pantheism, don't be afraid to show them the Pantheisms and force your opponent to give you the cards that you want. So very sick. I'm so glad the card's back. Now, for extra consistency, we are playing 3 copies of Tenacity. Tenacity is your spell and trap card searcher. You reveal a Monarch statted card and add a Monarch spell or trap. So you can search your Pantheisms, your domains, pretty much anything that you need. For more consistency, we are playing triple copies every turn. Some people play this at 2, and I just do not agree with it at all. This card is absolutely a 3 of for a lot of reasons. The main reasons that this card is just good, right? When you tribute summon, you can then search for a Monarch statted card of a different attribute. And the reason why this card's so good is because you can chain link. The way that chain links work in the game is that you can, for example, when you bring out a Kuraz and you start a chain link, you can make sure that this card is always a higher chain link than Kuraz, and then you can pop it with Kuraz because chain links resolve backwards, so you can search and then pop, and then you basically just go super plus, and that's just amazing. So also it's a name, so you can send it to the graveyard if you don't need it any more copies in the deck. Because we are a domain deck, we have to play the domain of the Monarchs. This is just the best floodgate in the deck. Really the only floodgate that we play, but it's so powerful. If you don't have any cards in your extra deck, your opponent can special summon from the extra deck. So it's like, I guess we're even, right? But you're not. The other effects are also very good. You can, once per turn, boost a tribute summon monster by 100 attack, which happens during damage calc. So that helps you out a couple of things. And you can also reduce a Monarch statted card, specifically the big Monarchs, the ones with 2800 attack. You can reduce their level by 2. And this happens even if the card leaves the field and it's not once per turn. So what that means is that you can, if you ever open a double domain, assuming that you have an Erebus, let me just get that for you. So what you can do is you can domain and then reduce the level of this Erebus, and then you domain again and reduce it again, so your Erebus is all level 4, so you can normal summon and then tribute summon somehow, some way. But that's just a play that you should be aware of. Now, for the best piece of removal / interruption, we have the triple copies of Stormforce. This card basically is a soul exchange. Instead of tributing one of your cards, you can tribute one of your opponent's cards, plus it's a quick play spell. So the reason why that's really important is because you can set it and then use it on your opponent's turn. And the reason why that's so important is because, remember, your Ether, you can tribute summon your Ether on your opponent's turn. So the whole idea is you set up your Stormforce, and then you activate Stormforce, and then you activate Ether, and you can take one of your opponent's cards, and then summon Ether, and then Ether can either summon a Kuraz, or summon out another Ether, or summon out another Erebus. Basically whatever you need for the next turn, and you just stop your opponent from playing the game while generating a lot of advantage. For the what I would consider the power spell cards, these are the extra consistency cards. Technically there are only 3, but I like to consider them the power 4 of. We have the Upstart Goblin, the Foolish, the 1/1, and the Reinforcements of the Army. You do not have to play Upstart Goblin. You could play like another card, but I just like the Upstart Goblin because it's more consistent. It basically increases your deck's consistency by like 2 or 3%, and making you play a 39 card deck over 40 card deck is already pretty good. Foolish Burly, you can send things like Erebus to the graveyard, or maybe an Eidos, or maybe an Ether to keep you in the game, or just to help you unbreak some hands. 1/1 special summons out Idea, and Rhoda searches the Edea. So these cards are basically more copies of Edea, and you can never have too many copies of that card because that's your best starter. The other flex spot in the deck we play is the one Frostblast. Frostblast is great because this card is MST. You target a set card your opponent controls and you destroy it if you control a Monarch selected card. But the second effect is what makes this card really good. So with Monarchs, the main thing that you should take away is that you're going to be sending a lot of spells and trap cards to the graveyard. And if you can send your Frostblast early, it means that at any point into the game, you have a way to remove back row. Also, it banishes a card to activate that effect in the graveyard. So with Edea, you can basically set up the card that you want to get back by using Frostblast. You banish a card, banish this, take a card out of your opponent's field, that's set, and then you can use Edea to get back the card that you banished. So that's something that you should also keep in mind when you're playing the Frostblast, and that's the main reason why I like this card so much, and basically, like, nobody plays this card, and I think that's ridiculous. I think the card is just super solid. Finally, this is pretty standard. Double copies of the Prime Monarch. 2 effects. You can shuffle 2 Monarch spells and trap cards, draw a card, while this card is in its continuous trap card version. If this card is in the graveyard, you can banish a Monarch spell and trap card, special summon this as a level 5 fairy with 1,000 attack, 2,400 defense. So it basically has reverse Monarch stats. That's really solid because 24 defense means that it's not going to be easily outed, and at any point you can put it into attack, swing for an extra 1,000, or you can tribute over it and keep your resource game going by just having a free body to tribute summon for, right? So that's pretty much it for the main deck. Very quickly, I'm going to go over a side deck because this is, a competitive deck, and I just want to show you some options of cards that you can play. 3 copies of Ash Blossom. If you feel like you don't want to play the 3 flex spot cards, play 3 Ash. This card's pretty good going first, pretty good going second, although it's much better going second. You're not looking to go second, you're ideally looking to go first, which is why I'm citing this card, so that way I can help myself going second to kind of stop my opponent from playing the game. I would also consider playing Gamma. Gamma is very, very strong because you play a lot of spells and trap cards that your opponent can negate, so you can bait your opponent into negating those cards, then you use Gamma. So the other card that I think is very important for the deck is Trap Eater. So Trap Eater, if your opponent has a face-up trap card, you can special summon this by sending a face-up trap card your opponent controls, and this card cannot be normal summoned or set. So the whole idea is that this eats floodgates, and then you can tribute over it. The reason why that's important is because if Monarchs become relevant, people might start playing Mask of Restrict. So when they flip up the Mask of Restrict, you activate Trap Eater, get rid of the Mask of Restrict, and keep playing the game. You proceed to play the game. The other anti-meta side deck card that I really like playing is Jinzo. Jinzo makes your opponent not be able to use trap cards. This is especially good against like Altergeist, Subterror decks that play evenly matched. Those types of cards, Jinzo just negates all of them. He is a monster that you can tribute summon. Unfortunately, he doesn't have Monarch stats. Can you imagine? That would be great. But he's still very, very good as an option in the side deck. So for the quirky 3 cards that I'm playing in my side, you could literally play like anything else. I'm choosing to play these cards. They still have some niche applications here and there. Monarchs Root is pretty good against main deck decks, like decks that rely on the main deck. And so you need something to shut them down, so I like the Monarchs Rub for that. Prankertops can flex as a card that you can tribute summon, as well as a starter, as well as removal. This card is just super, super good, very, very flexible. And March is kind of okay against decks that have a removal against your deck or target like some of your Monarch cards. So, you know, you can use this to protect against some stuff like Sky Striker and whatnot, right? And then finally, more back row hate. 2 copies of Twin Twister and 1 Red Reboot. The card's called Twin Twister, so play 2, and then Red Reboot, just very good against back row heavy decks, which I think is one of this deck's weaknesses. So yeah, that's pretty much it for the Monarch deck. If you have any suggestions or cards that you would play, let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll see you guys in the next one.